The research methodology follows your audience market description, and the research methodology is a very important part of your overall case study that you're going to be doing. In essence, you have your entire project is wrapped around all of these individual assignments. So the first thing that you've done is provide the audience market description, and then now you're going to provide the research methodology. Now you've had a chance to look at using qualitative research in advertising methods in chapters 1 through 4 of the Morrison, Haley, Sheehan, and Taylor book. And that particular book gives you a lot of good information on the various types of methodologies that you could possibly use qualitative wise, and also chapters 5 and 6. So you've had all of that material, you've been tested over it, and now it's time to actually apply chapters 1 through 6 of the UQR textbook. And in this particular part, you're going to explain how you went through the process of deciding your sample. And remember that your sample is going to be somewhere around 4 to 6 people if you're doing an interview. If you're doing a participant observation, it might be 1 to 2 people. If you're doing a focus group, you might have 4 or 5 people. Those are the types of sample sizes. Your overall idea is who are you really wanting to reach. And one of the things that I want to mention to you is that a lot of times people always think of surveying and interviewing people who are already audience members. And that's not really one of the things that you want to do. Those people already exist. Now you may want to interview one of those types of people because you want to keep them. But if you want to understand these people that you're not reaching, then you need to actually go out and seek out people that are not necessarily your audience members. And if you're working in that industry already, you're working at a television station, radio station, working at a newspaper, you're working at a web company that creates content, then you need to be seeking out people, not necessarily those who are always on board with what you're doing, but those who are not on board as well. And that will give you richer data. So sampling is important, defining your population. You're already kind of doing that a little bit when you do the audience market description. But if you want to get specific to the types of people that you want to interview, and then the sample and sampling procedure that you want to follow. And remember, you can use purposive sampling. There's some examples of the different types of sampling in your textbook, and I think it's really important that you look through those to make sure that you're following that. One of the things that you want to do is also you want to describe how you found the people that you decided, let's say, to interview, or the people that you decided to put in a focus group. And you want to be really thoughtful about that. And you want to think about diversity. You want to think about having different people groups. And then you want to think about your programming, how it reaches those diverse populations as well. In addition, you're going to identify your methodology and explain why you chose that methodology. Now remember, as you're going through this entire process, although it's really a first-person type event, it's really not. You need to, because of the APA, you need to follow the rules of correct usage of first, second, and third person. You're going to be using third person. You are the researcher. In this case, you may be the interviewer. You would not say, I interviewed somebody. You would say the researcher interviewed someone. You might use a content analysis and do a thematic analysis, although that's really not talked about too much. If I were doing this, I would probably stay away from content analysis, but there might be reasons for you to use it. For instance, you have certain types of programming and you're trying to figure out why maybe people aren't watching that programming, and you start doing a thematic analysis and you start seeing certain themes that begin to emerge, and you might use that. You might use in-depth interviews, and there's a really good example in the UQR book, and it's at the back of the book in the appendix, and it is appendix, let me check here, just making sure, appendix 1 and also appendix 2. Those are good examples of conducting long interviews and actually getting your skills out there. Remember how you talk to someone and the elicitation methods that you use are important to gathering your data. So you're going to describe that process, why you chose the method that you did, why you think that's the better method. So what that means is you're going to actually say, well, I chose this method and the reason that I did was because of this. And you could use the citations from the 2 textbooks that we have so that you could justify using that. And it's not just simply it's important, it's that you use research that's already been done related to these theories. You may also go out online and find some credible sources related to qualitative research methods and use those as citations as well, but your textbooks are fine to use in that process. Now, the next thing that you're going to do is you are going to provide the data collection instrument. If you do interviews, then you are going to have a list of interview questions. You're also going to have questions that would be follow-up questions anticipating what someone might answer. You will not always know that, but you will need that kind of situation. Whether you're doing a focus group or you're doing individual interviews, you're going to have a set of questions. Most people are going to ask, how many questions should I have? Well, it depends on the problem that you're looking at, but my guesstimate is you would need a minimum of 20 questions. You might need more than that. You're also, if you're going to do a content analysis and you're going to look at thematic analysis and look at media content, and kind of discuss how audiences behave towards certain forms of content and why they may be reacting the way they are. Let's say, for instance, you decided to do an analysis of your station and its content versus some content on Netflix, and you wanted to do a thematic analysis of programming between your station and Netflix, and then perhaps talk to some audience members who use Netflix as opposed to your station. You could certainly do that. And remember, it doesn't necessarily have to be your station. It could be a station in your market where you are, so that you don't have to be working in the industry in order to do these. You can talk to people, interview people, and gather information about their audiences. And then you may decide that you want to actually share this with some of these organizations if you're not already working for them. That may assist you in getting a job by being noticed by your thorough analysis of what's going on with a particular station or something like that, or a particular newspaper or magazine or web content source. So you have a data collection instrument, and then you're going to need some operational definitions. Now, the operational definitions, you're going to define unusual terms. You need to have that available to you so that, let's say, for instance, you ask somebody a question in the interview and they do not understand the terminology that you are using. You would need to have a definition of that terminology, and then you would probably need to have an example of that terminology that is removed from the actual phenomena that you're wanting to look at. In addition to the methodology, you're going to need to indicate your limitations. Now, at this particular point, oftentimes limitations are associated with sampling process. The smaller your sample, the more there could be problems associated with generalizing that to anyone. In fact, because of the way that we do sampling and qualitative, there's always going to be an issue with sampling and the limitation of being able to generalize that to a larger population. And that's what you're going to be doing. And then you're set. So your research methodology is going to be between 3 and 5 pages long. You will have your data collection instrument. The data collection instrument can be inside your research methodology, or you can write about the data collection instrument and then put the data collection instrument in a appendix if you wish to do that. So that pretty much sums up everything related to the research methodology. That will be due Monday at 8 a.m.